Hi friends, hello, hi, how are you? I hope you guys are having an amazing day today. Hello. Hi, so today's candle of the day is mountain teak wood. It smells very fresh, very clean, a nice way to start the new year. Today's video is one that I am very excited to talk about. It is one I've been honestly debating making a video about for a long time, and that is the evolution of Lime Crime Cosmetics. I would make the argument that as far as makeup brands go, Lime Crime Cosmetics has been one of my most requested sort of evolution of or deep dive videos, simply because of the sheer amount of scandals that not only the brand has been in, but also the owner Dodier has been in. Now, honestly, I think Lime Crime is super interesting because I would put them up there with brands like KVD and Jeffree Star Cosmetics in terms of having really, really problematic owners and also just really problematic issues in general. But I think Lime Crime is super unique because despite all of those scandals and problems, number one, they're still thriving today. And number two, I think that unlike those brands, a lot of people don't really know about everything that happened with this brand. Like even I didn't know some of this stuff when I started researching it, and I found things out along the way. But I think the reason Lime Crime got away with a lot of this stuff, not necessarily got away with it, but you know what I mean? Like I think the reason a lot of people now don't necessarily know about them is because a lot of these scandals and controversies happened before the YouTube drama space was really happening. So it was kind of before a time when people would call out brands for doing things like this, especially on social media. While there are an abundance of blog posts and articles written about the situation, I think because YouTube commentary and drama channels weren't necessarily covering this type of stuff, it made it a lot less known, especially in the YouTube space, the controversies that Lime Crime as a brand did have. And I think that's part of the reason that despite having honestly worse situations than like Jeffree Star Cosmetics or KVD Cosmetics, I think the reason that they've been able to really prosper, especially now in 2022, is because a lot of this stuff has just flown under the radar for so long. I also think Lime Crime is super interesting because a lot of the brands I just talked about, like Jeffree Star Cosmetics or KVD, there was sort of a dip in products when the owners started also being terrible. So it made it easier for people to sort of stop supporting the brand. Whereas Lime Crime is a little bit different in that they haven't necessarily had a dip in quality of product. I think truly the reason people don't support them is just because of how problematic they are. Like it's not even because the makeup is bad, because honestly most of their products are really good. So today I want to dive into the many scandals of Lime Crime Cosmetics and also talk a little bit about how they impacted the makeup industry. And yeah, if you're interested in that, keep watching. Before we actually jump into today's video, we do have a sponsor, so let's roll to that. Hi friends, Editing Me here, and today's video is sponsored by Way. You guys know that I absolutely love the Way hair care products. I think they're phenomenal. I've been using them for going on 2 years now, and I sincerely accredit them to my hair transformation over the past few years. I used to always wear my hair in a very messy bun, never really took care of it, never put product in it. It always looked really dry and frizzy, and now it is super shiny, super moisturized, and I just cannot speak highly enough about the products. So today I wanted to tell you some of my favorites. I feel like during the holiday time, our hair can sometimes go through just a lot. Like you're always styling it for Christmas parties or New Year's parties. I didn't even have a New Year's party. I just sat on my couch and I still curled my hair and was like doing it up so I could take a cute Instagram picture. So it's really important this time of year especially to just be taking really good care of your hair and making sure that even though it's going under all of this kind of extra stress because you're using more product in it, more heat tools, things like that, that it's still gonna look good and feel really, really healthy. One of the best things I do to sort of combat the like abuse of my hair is using the Way Detox Shampoo. I use this probably once a week. Occasionally I'll do it twice a week, but sometimes I think that's too much. This basically just resets your hair. Like if you're the type of person like me who's using a lot of hairsprays or a lot of gels or mousses, a lot of times when we use those products like hairsprays and stuff, there's a lot of buildup. And what this does is just sort of takes away all of that buildup. I swear after I use this, my scalp and my roots just feel so much more clean and soft and just look so much more fresh and renewed. Another product I would recommend for helping your hair sort of reset after the craziness of the holidays is the Way Heat Protector. protectant spray. I never used a heat protectant spray before like this past summer. When I tell you this has changed the game for me, I don't know why I didn't use one for so long, and this one is phenomenal. It protects your hair from any heat damage that you could get from using hot tools like straighteners or curling irons. I noticed that even if I was using creams and oils, my hair sometimes felt almost just like a little bit fried from how much I would be straightening it or curling it. And using this has significantly improved that. If you're gonna be styling your hair with any sort of hot tools, a heat protectant is an absolute must. And I find that it just gives my hair like a nice little shine, a nice little boost. And then finally, I would absolutely recommend the Way hair oil. I have never loved a hair oil as much as I have loved this one. I used to be really afraid of hair oils. My hair is a little bit thin and a little bit more fine. So I found that if I used an oil, it would sometimes make my hair just look really greasy. Not this. Like literally my hair, especially when I use this on my wet hair, has never been greasy. And what I also love about this is you can use it on dry hair. You definitely have to be a little bit more careful. You don't want to put in too much, but you can use it on dry hair and just add a little bit of extra shine. Like I did that today before I put these curls in, and I think it just gave my hair a little extra boost, a little extra shine. If you're using it on dry hair, make sure you focus it more on the ends of your hair and not so much the roots. But when I use this on my wet hair, I just put it literally all over. Like I coat my entire head from probably like here down in this stuff, and it makes my hair when it dries look so smooth, so shiny. I don't even need to blow dry it or straighten it or do anything to it. I can just let it air dry with this stuff in it, and it's gonna look super smooth, super refreshed. I've been absolutely loving this product. Way also just has a ton of other cool products. Again, I've tried a bunch of them. If you guys want any recommendations, feel free to leave it in the comments. I literally am obsessed with their products. I've used, I think, almost all of them. If you're interested in trying anything that I just recommended from Way, you can go to theouai.com and use code Smokey for 15% off your entire purchase. That is 15% off your entire purchase at theouai.com and using code Smokey. Thank you so much to Way for sponsoring this video and help rejuvenating my hair after the stress of the holiday season. And let's jump into the video. So I think before we jump into Lime Crime Cosmetics, it's really important to cover how Lime Crime as a fashion brand actually started. Xenia Voritova, which I apologize in advance if I pronounce that wrong. I've looked it up, Googled it. I'm definitely trying, but I'm not 100% sure if that's right. But Xenia Voritova, who most people now know as Doe Deer, actually was born in Russia, moved to New York City, and grew up in New York City. And when she was 23 years old, she started Lime Crime, but it's not the Lime Crime that we know today. So back in 2004, Xenia and her partner, Mark Dumbleton, launched Lime Crime as sort of an eBay seller brand. I feel like the best equivalent I can find to their sort of early stuff is, has anybody seen Girl Boss on Netflix? About how Nasty Gal, which is a really prominent clothing store online retailer, came to be. And it's sort of about this like girl boss who like follows her dreams and like opens this online eBay store. That's kind of the vibe I was getting from the clothes that I could find from this time frame that Xenia was putting out. Clothing was super inspired by Lolita fashion, which is actually really prominent in Japan, and especially in the 1990s and 2000s, it very much evolved into sort of a subculture of Japan, which that is important for later on. Xenia was basically selling these very vintage, repurposed, bright, bold, colorful outfits. A lot of stuff was like underwear. The reason that this clothing brand was so successful, especially at first, was because before Xenia had actually launched her eBay shop, she had sort of a built-in following from this website called LiveJournal. Now, the best way that I can describe LiveJournal, because I had no idea what this was, the best way I could describe this was sort of like an online journal. That's literally what it was. Based on the website I looked at, it seems like it was similar to MySpace, but a little bit more personal. Like you could write basically blog posts about your life. You could do videos, you could do pictures to just show things. And Xenia had built up this pretty large following on LiveJournal. So when she started her clothing line on eBay, it was really easy for her to have her built-in audience support her, which made her initial clothing launches very successful. Xenia also claimed to be an FIT, which is the Fashion Institute of Technology in New York City. She claimed to be an FIT dropout. I was reading a lot of blog posts in researching this about sort of this initial eBay shop, and it seems like she really heavily heavily relied on being an FIT dropout and really focused on how she handmade a lot of the clothes, which at the time gave the store and the brand a lot more legitimacy. However, that legitimacy started to falter in 2004. Xenia was accused of basically ripping off another eBay seller's clothing. Interestingly enough, the clothing brand that she was accused of ripping off was actually the clothing brand of the person who went on to sell Sugar Pill Cosmetics, which I just think is super interesting. Would have never imagined that those two owners had this random beef in 2004. The claim was that Xenia was ripping off her brand and styles and designs. And then as years went on, she started sort of evolving the type of clothing that she was making into more sort of pastel, fairy-like vibes. And in 2006, she was again accused of ripping off another clothing store on eBay. Right from the get, I know that that seems like a little petty and you're like, okay, well this happened, what, 20 years ago? Like who cares? But I think that it shows a real pattern of behavior that were definitely shown when she went on to start Lime Crime Cosmetics. And also at the time of a lot of these scandals, a lot of people who followed Xenia on LiveJournal ended up leaving her LiveJournal account. So I guess it's the equivalent of like losing subscribers on YouTube. People basically left after this controversy because they just felt like they couldn't believe that she wasn't ripping off these clothes because it was like eerily similar. However, despite these claims, she did still have a large following on there, and also her eBay shop where she was selling her clothes were doing really well. But Xenia has talked about the fact that she sort of got sick of doing clothing and that her sort of love and passion was turning towards makeup. So in 2005, she started focusing her content on LiveJournal a lot less about fashion and a lot more about makeup. She started posting makeup videos, photos of her makeup. She was really drawn to these very bright colors, like super neon and bold, and definitely very different from what other makeup brands were even putting out. Like this was at a time when you couldn't really just go and buy a bunch of bold, colorful lipsticks or bold glitters. Like this was kind of before that. So she was doing something a little bit different and a little bit more unique. Now there was another hiccup in all of this before she actually launched Lime Crime Cosmetics. I wouldn't even call it a hiccup. This is probably what Doe Deer, which is the name she goes by now, this is what she is most known for now. And that is the fact that she dressed up like Hitler. Yeah, she dressed up like Hitler. I always assumed that the picture of her dressed up like Hitler was something that people like found and exposed, but she actually exposed it herself. So in a 2008 blog post on her LiveJournal, Xenia actually literally posted this picture amongst a bunch of other pictures. She was basically talking about old Halloween costumes that she did, and this is what she had to say. In typical bad taste, I was Adolf Hitler. Once again, I was testing how much I could get away with. If you think Hitler is not a very popular figure where you are, wait till you get to New York City. I wasn't trying to offend anyone in particular. I just wanted to wear the costume. The reactions I got were varied, but I think most people got that it was all in good fun and didn't get in my face. Yay! Smiley face. There's not a lot of commentary to add here. I don't feel like I need to sit here and explain why it's incredibly problematic and fucked up to dress up like Adolf Hitler, and then also to do it and then repost it like it's something that you're proud of, like 2 years after the fact, to repost that photo yourself and also say like, oh, I wasn't trying to offend anyone in particular, but I just wanted to do it because I just wanted to. Like still not understanding 2 years later how problematic and messed up that is. I think it's just really jarring to know. And obviously when she brought this up on her own blog in 2008, she got a ton of backlash for this. She did end up deleting that blog post, but it has been archived obviously, so people have found it. And even though this did get brought to light in 2008, I feel like the Hitler photo didn't really come to light again until about 2015, which I think is super interesting, but like we'll get there in the timeline. Basically, she just dressed up like Hitler for fun and then exposed herself for doing it in a 2008 blog post because she obviously did not see a ton wrong with it at the time. The only other little scandal that I could find from before she started Lime Crime Cosmetics was a 2007 raffle that she held. She basically claimed to raise money for an animal shelter, and then when people looked into what the animal shelter was that she was raising money for, they found out that it literally just didn't exist. So she committed charity fraud. And because of this, her PayPal account was suspended because people reported her and they found this out. And again, I know that like people are probably going to say, well, that was like 10, 15 years ago. But I think that the problem with Lime Crime is that all of this stuff, when you look at it cumulatively, it adds up to be this really, really problematic situation. It's almost like from the beginning, before she even actually started Lime Crime Cosmetics, Doe Deer was doing some really shady fucked up stuff. And I think that that's the reason that today the brand has ultimately suffered and not been able to reach this like massive level of success. So because of all these scandals, their clothing company definitely took a hit. So they decided to pivot in 2008 after Doe posting more makeup related content for 3 years and pivot to Lime Crime Cosmetics. So in October 2008, Lime Crime Cosmetics launched with loose powders, glitters, blushes, brushes, just kind of a basic assortment of stuff. And right away, there was a lot of criticism for Lime Crime because people basically figured out that a lot of the stuff was private labels. There weren't a ton of YouTubers that were reviewing the products at the time. However, there were a lot of beauty bloggers that were writing posts talking about how they compared Lime Crime Cosmetics like loose glitters with private labeled loose glitters, and how Lime Crime was basically just selling these products for an extreme upcharge, even though they were the exact same. I think now in makeup, we're almost a little bit desensitized to private labeling. And honestly, I think a lot more companies are just more upfront and honest about the fact that they're private labeling, which definitely helps. At the time, the concept of private labeling was not really widely used or widely known. It caused a lot of drama when the brand first launched and led to a lot of negative reviews in the blogger space. Also, I should mention that when Lime Crime Cosmetics launched in 2008, this is when Xenia changed her name to Doe Deer, and that is the name that she goes by today. It's almost like a stage name. She kind of tried to start a singing career and a music career. It didn't really go anywhere. The one song that did get a little popular, she ended up being very offensive towards the LGBTQIA+ community with. So she was going by Doe Deer now, and Doe Deer was very, very combative about bad reviews and negative things people had to say. Despite a lot of the negative reviews that they got, because Lime Crime was so sort of different in the makeup space at the time, I think that's why they had a lot of initial success. They had a theme going that was really based around unicorns. So it was basically all like unicorn themed, super unique. It popped against other indie makeup brands. And also they were creating really colorful, not only bullet lipsticks, but also liquid lipsticks that had a really good formula. So despite a lot of these controversies, the brand was still doing relatively well in the indie beauty space. However, in 2009, Doe Deer had sort of a personal, I don't know what to call it. It was like a literal beef between Temptalia, who, if you don't know who Temptalia is, she's one of the most prominent beauty bloggers. I would say she's actually the only beauty blogger that I still ever actually read. Like, she does really, really thorough reviews on makeup, but she would give products this sort of ranking. So she would rate them like A through F or whatever. She got the Lime Crime lipsticks in 2009 and she gave them a review and she gave them a C- because she didn't really like them and she didn't think they were very good. Doe got in the comments of Temptalia's blog post and was trying to defend her products to other people and to Temptalia herself. And then when that wasn't working and Temptalia was refusing to remove the review, Doe sent out an email to all of her customers exposing Temptalia's email and telling them to email her directly and tell her how good they thought the lipsticks were, in the hopes that it would cause Temptalia to remove her review. And honestly, this isn't the only instance I found of Doe Deer trying to silence and threaten beauty bloggers, especially. Like, she sent people cease and desists for speaking poorly about her makeup. She sent legal threats to people. She doxed people's emails and I don't know if I guess that's considered doxing, but I feel like it is, to like blast someone's email to send them harassment. I guess it was more targeted harassment, but she was exposing people's emails, trying to get her supporters to email them and tell them they were wrong. She would delete any negative comments on their social media accounts. She wouldn't allow for anybody to leave bad reviews. Just a lot of trying to cover up any sort of negative feedback that the brand got. And I think the even crazier part about that is that a lot of the stuff that Doe was trying to cover up, it wasn't like bad reviews, they just weren't glowing reviews. Like even Temptalia's review, it was literally just kind of like, yeah, these products weren't really for me. I wasn't a huge fan. She had some problems, but she didn't say it was like the worst lipstick she'd ever tried or the worst brand she'd ever tried. She just gave an honest review from her own opinion. And I think a lot of beauty brands would take that and try to take it as constructive criticism, try to think how maybe they could improve their products. But Doe kind of just went in full on attack mode. And attacked a lot of beauty bloggers from like 2008 all the way up to like 2011, I think was the last one I found, where she was basically just attacking them and threatening them for giving her negative reviews. It's crazy doing this because I'm realizing as I'm like reading all of this out loud, there is not one year that goes by until like 2018 where this brand does not have a scandal. Every year that Doe Deer is involved with this brand, there is some type of scandal or some type of horrible thing that happened to the brand. Anyway, so remember when I said that Doe's clothing line being based on Lolita fashion was going to come into play later? That's where we are now. So in 2012, Lime Crime launched the China Doll palette. Not only is this palette very insensitive in its name, like culturally insensitive, the advertisement for this palette is a white woman wearing a kimono's makeup, and the tagline was, "Don't let her milky skin, pouty mouth, and flushed cheeks fool you. Underneath the poised facade, there lies a heart of a tigress." So just like blatant appropriation. The palette was basically a 5-pan palette, and it just perpetuated Asian stereotypes. Also, the biggest criticism was that it was really just a sort of simplified, appropriative view of Asian culture. It wasn't celebrating Asian culture, it was just appropriating it. Now, Doe Deer did do an interview where she defended this palette, and I'm gonna read you just some excerpts from that interview. She said, "It came from a good place in my heart, and it saddens me to see anyone get offended by it. If you found it offensive on any level, for that I am really sorry. But China Doll will live." So okay. "I'm not going to kill her just because it makes some people uncomfortable. That would require sacrificing my artistic integrity and sending a radical message I don't believe in to the community." So basically she doubled down. Like basically she saw the criticism that this palette was getting. She saw the people in the Asian community who were offended, and she basically said, "I don't care. I'm gonna do it anyway because I think it's fine." She also went on to say that it was silly that people were accusing her of cultural appropriation. She actually used the term silly, and also said that what mattered was her intent, which I would highly disagree with, especially in terms of cultural appropriation. Your intent really does not matter. What matters is people's reaction to what you did, and the reaction to this was overwhelmingly negative. Also, this gem I just found really interesting. It says, "I think it encourages acceptance, enriches our existence, and makes us more tolerant towards other humans all over the world. Borrowing from cultures and letting borrow is vital to ending racism and bigotry." I just fundamentally disagree with the politics of Doe Deer. Like, that's first and foremost. Second of all, I don't understand, nothing about this is celebrating Asian culture. You're just using blatant Asian stereotypes that have been perpetuated in media for centuries that the Asian community is actively trying to get to stop. You're just using those and throwing them in a palette so that you can actively profit from it. There's no like representation, or like if she had done a collaboration with the Asian community and had brought in all these different beauty bloggers or different brand owners and had them collaborate on a palette that celebrated Asian culture, that would be one thing. But you have a white woman wearing a kimono with all of these different stereotypes in your tagline about milky skin and pouty lips and having the heart of a tigress. Like, this is not celebration or artistry. This is just blatant appropriation of a culture for your own personal gain. Also, the fact that she dismisses people's outrage as just being uncomfortable is like laughable to me. But anyway, that was one of the first big scandals it seems like they got in. Based on the blog posts and other people that were talking about it in the comments of blog posts, people were really outraged by this product and basically just thought it was incredibly offensive. And I have to agree, especially looking at the imagery that they chose for the palette, it is incredibly offensive and it is incredibly stereotypical. Things only got worse from here. After all of this happened, again, they were still somehow just like pushing through. Honestly, I think that Lime Crime is a really good testament for if you have good products, you'll be okay. Like, you can do all of this horribly offensive shit and like you'll be fine. Because I think the reason they were still so successful despite all of these scandals, like it was scandal after scandal after scandal, by 2014 they were still doing really well. They were actively expanding their product range. They were coming out with these really bold lipsticks, liquid lipsticks, which were huge, and they were even even starting to be featured in mainstream stores. Like they were carried at Sephora for a few weeks before they were dropped. And they also were carried at Urban Outfitters, who still carries them. So they were starting to expand into brick and mortar stores, which I honestly think was a huge benefit for them, because a lot of people who maybe didn't know who Doe Deer was, didn't know anything about the brand, were seeing this makeup in store, thinking it was cute because it was aesthetically very cute, and picking it up. So I think that was another reason they had a lot of success, was that they kind of went an alternative route. Instead of going to the like Sephora Ulta route or the makeup store route, they started being sold in places like Urban Outfitters, which isn't necessarily a makeup store. Number one, there's less competition for makeup at those stores. And number two, people that shop there might not be as familiar with sort of stuff going on in the makeup industry, especially at this time in like 2014, because social media was definitely very relevant and popular, but it was not as it is today. So I think that that was also part of the reason that they were able to do so well. However, I would argue one of the most memorable, probably the biggest issue, honestly, that Lime Crime has ever had, and I think this has had a really profound effect on their business, was the security leak that happened in February of 2015. Basically, the company sent out a memo that the names, credit card information, and addresses of many customers had been compromised. This later went to court. There was a massive lawsuit around this, but a lot of people that were impacted by this data breach claimed that the company had known about this data leak for 3 months and continued to allow people to use their website, which in turn led to a ton of people having their credit card information stolen. As I said, this resulted in a lawsuit, and they settled in December of 2017, where Lime Crime was ordered to pay $110,000. It basically equaled out to about $44 per victim, and Lime Crime threw in a 15% off coupon to their website, which is just like the most insane thing I've ever heard. Oh, your credit card information was stolen as a direct result of our negligence, but here's $44 and 15% off your next purchase. I think that this was a really big turning point for them, and this was a time when a lot of people stopped supporting them. Once people found out that Lime Crime actively knew that people's information was being stolen and they didn't do anything about it, I think it was really hard for people to gain back trust in the company, simply because they didn't know if they could safely shop there online. And even though they were sold in a couple stores, they were primarily an online retailer. So if people can't trust your website and can't trust that their information isn't going to get stolen, people are not going to want to buy from your website. On top of that, in 2015, there was a massive scandal with Lime Crime and the FDA, where it was said that 2 of the ingredients found in one of their red lipsticks was a direct violation of the FDA. If you don't know what the FDA is, basically they just approve all ingredients. Like they test to see if an ingredient is safe to go on your lips, and if it is, they approve it to be in lipsticks, and if it's not, which in this case 2 of the ingredients weren't, then the brand can get in a lot of trouble. And the reason the FDA actually found out about this and opened an investigation into Lime Crime was because they received a bunch of complaints from Lime Crime customers who were saying that they had tried to reach out to the brand to either get a refund or just let them know that they were selling a product that did not fall under the FDA's approved list, and they were blocked on social media by those customers. So even as recently as 2015, the brand has been doing a lot of shady stuff in terms of blocking out all criticism. So honestly, those 2 instances are very similar. It was really just Lime Crime being incredibly negligent. They had people coming to them trying to tell them things and trying to tell them information. Like people were trying to tell them that their data had been stolen. People were trying to tell them that they had ingredients in their makeup that could be potentially dangerous to consumers. And both times, Lime Crime just blocked them on social media or didn't respond to their requests and moved on as if nothing was wrong. The only time they ever actually did anything in these 2 instances were because of lawsuits or FDA investigations, which is just absolutely nutty to me that they allowed these situations to go on for so long that law enforcement had to get involved. Because of all of this happening between 2014 and 2015, like these were huge scandals at the time. Because of all of this happening, the Doe Deer Hitler picture was brought to the surface again. And I think this is when a lot more people became fully aware of just how problematic Lime Crime was. Up until this point in 2015, Doe Deer was very much the face of her brand. I, again, equate it to Jeff Jeffree Star Cosmetics, KVD, Too Faced, like how everybody knows Jared Blandino and he's like the head and the face of that company. That's kind of how Doe Deer was with Lime Crime. She was very much the face of her own company. People knew her in the makeup industry. They knew who she was. Her makeup brand was inspired by herself. She has said that self-admittedly, that like she was inspired by herself and by who she was to create the products that she made. So her image was very much intertwined with her brand. And when all of this really problematic stuff started happening, including stuff from her past and also the brand itself just having these massive controversies, lawsuits, investigations, it led to a real downward spiral of the brand where a lot of people started boycotting them and not using them anymore. So in 2015, this is when a lot of YouTubers also started calling out the brand and started shedding light on how problematic and terrible they were. I think all of this came to a head in 2016 because Doe Deer was honestly, it was well known at this point how problematic she had been in her past, and now the brand itself was really struggling under her leadership. So in 2016, Doe Deer took an active sort of step back from Lime Crime. And this is when we sort of get into the redemption of Lime Crime. Honestly, before we even get into the redemption, I also feel like it's important to note that this step back that Doe took in 2016 was number one, very calculated, but number two, could not have happened at a better time. I think if Doe Deer had even stayed on for like a year or two longer, Lime Crime would have closed, or they would have been like actively failing at this point in time. I feel like 2016 was a good time for her to step back. There had just been too many scandals since the brand started that were actively started by Doe Deer. And I think that at this point, because the sort of makeup community on YouTube was growing even bigger and more brands were relying on social media marketing in order to market their makeup products, I think had Doe Deer stayed on being as integrated into this makeup brand, I don't think they would have done as well because they were sort of blacklisted in the YouTube community in 2016. Like people didn't really want to review the products, even though people would say like these products are great, they're really good. They didn't want to review them or talk about them because they knew that their audience would react poorly because of how offensive Doe had been. Also because of all of these different lawsuits and FDA investigations. I honestly think that between 2016 and 2018, this is when Lime Crime really started to reinvent themselves. They had a couple of small issues, like in late 2016, they had some issues with a super foil shadow where customers were complaining that the pans were moldy and rusty. But other than that, that was kind of their last big scandal. And after that, Doe and her husband hired a woman named Kim Walls, who basically took over as CEO of the company. I honestly think, I know a lot of people associate Doe Deer with Lime Crime. I would say from like 2017 onward, Kim Walls is the person you should be associating with Lime Crime. And I honestly think she is one of the only reasons this brand is still around and doing as well as it did. She basically gave Lime Crime a massive redemption arc. I think this was really necessary because while Doe's creativity had gotten her as far as she did, I think that her lack of business skills and also her lack of just being able to be a brand owner is what really put her and her brand in such jeopardy. Kim Walls was much more focused on growing the brand, and while she still consulted with Doe and her husband about the more creative side of things, she took over a lot more of the business side of things. She improved their security on their website to ensure that another security breach would never happen. She hired a bunch of new staff so that they could expand into different stores like Ulta and Bloomingdale's. And she was much more focused on putting out just good quality makeup and accepting the negative reviews than she was trying to silence people who had opposing opinions. Pretty much all of the articles I've read and all of the blog posts I've read that have covered Lime Crime throughout the years really accredit Kim Walls to taking on Doe Deer's bad reputation and really transforming the brand. They accredit her to the brand even still being open, and I agree with that just based on everything I've seen. Now, throughout all of sort of 2016, 2017, I think this was really sort of damage control years. They were just trying to get their reputation back on track, and honestly, I think the goal was probably to just not have a scandal, which for the most part they succeeded in. They did settle their lawsuit in 2017, and like I said, a lot of people, especially those that were impacted, were not pleased with this settlement. However, they did put it to bed and they did try to resolve it legally, and they did sincerely sincerely improved their customer security after that lawsuit was settled, so I would say that was a win. I think the biggest change came in 2018 when the brand was bought by 10 Gram Capital Partners. It's unclear how much they bought the brand for, but what is clear is that contingent on this deal was that Doe Deer would be stepping down from her day-to-day operations. Kim would be taking over that role. Doe Deer did still have a spot on the board, however, which became sort of a point of contention for people. By 2018, I think a lot of people, especially in the YouTube space, were really willing to give Lime Crime a chance again. Like I said, they've always had really good products, really good makeup, so I think people wanted to give them a chance and wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt and wanted to support them. But because everybody hated Doe Deer for all of this terrible stuff she had done, they didn't want to be putting money in her pocket. And this is where sort of another scandal came into play. A lot of people were under the impression that when 10 Gram Capital Partners bought Lime Crime, that meant that Doe Deer no longer had any involvement in Lime Crime and therefore had no monetary gains from Lime Crime, which was the biggest reason people didn't want to support the brand. They didn't want to be putting money in Doe Deer's pocket, was basically the gist of it. However, at the end of 2018, Lime Crime did a sit-down interview with a YouTuber named Jay Kissa, where they basically talked about the brand, and one of the biggest questions, obviously, that she had was what was Doe Deer's involvement. This is when people found out that Doe Deer, while she was not a part of the sort of day-to-day operations of the brand, she was very much still on the board of directors for Lime Crime, which in turn meant that she was still actively making a massive profit from the brand. I think this left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouth because, like I said, before this video with Jay Kissa, a lot of people had assumed that Doe no longer had any sort of involvement with the brand, which is what I think Lime Crime wanted you to think. I think they wanted you to think she didn't really have any sort of financial gain from them anymore. So they were a little bit shady and a little bit dishonest and misleading about her actual role in the company. And even in the interview they did with Jay Kissa, they really tried to downplay her role. It goes from them saying they only have quarterly board meetings to them saying, well, yeah, but she still stops in from time to time to like give her input and she'll always be sort of the inspiration of Lime Crime. So it seems like even though they had made a lot of strides gaining back the trust of their consumers after having some really bad product launches, FDA investigation, after the lawsuit, it seemed like even though they were gaining back that trust from the consumers, they still could not shake the reputation that Doe Deer had and the impact that it would have on the brand. Honestly, I think the reason that Lime Crime was able to be so successful during this time while Doe Deer was still actively on their board, and a lot of people knew that obviously, I think the reason that they were still so successful was mostly because of their presence in brick and mortar stores. I mean, they were in Bloomingdale's, Riley Rose, Ulta, Urban Outfitters, they were kind of everywhere. And I think again, this really helped them because people who didn't know who Doe Deer was, they'll see something cute like one of the Venus palettes and just be like, oh, I like that, I'll buy it, without really thinking too much into who the brand was. Which again, I think was smart business-wise for them. Distancing from Doe was kind of their only option at this point, just because the controversy around her had grown so big. Now in July of 2020, something kind of unexpected happened. After the of George Floyd, Doe Deer actually stepped down from the board of Lime Crime and let go of all of her sort of financial holdings on the brand and said she wanted to give her seat to a BIPOC candidate. And now she is much more focused on her new brand called Poppy Angela, where she sells teacups and necklaces and like rings and stuff. I wouldn't check it out. Honestly, I wouldn't buy anything that she puts out. That's like, if this video tells you anything, it's that Doe Deer is not exactly the most reliable businesswoman. She's done a lot of shady shit and I think she still does a lot of shady shit, but like regardless, since then, Lime Crime has basically been scandal free. And even though they haven't put out any sort of stellar products that have like shook the makeup industry, I would say they're doing really well. I mean, their stuff's always sold out at Ulta. People still rave about a lot of their products. I've even bought a few of their wet cherry lip glosses and really like them. I think a lot more people, now that they know Doe is not involved, feel more comfortable supporting the brand. So we're seeing a lot more marketing for it in the social media world, which probably has a boost in sales for them. And also, I think because it has been 7 years since the FDA issue and the data breach, a lot of customers have just gained a lot of trust back in the brand that they didn't have before. So kind of some final thoughts. While I think all of this is very interesting, and I'm glad that I was able to sort of give a timeline of events that happened as to why people didn't support support Lime Crime, why they had such a problematic past. I feel like whenever I mention it in videos, people are like, wait, what did Lime Crime do? Like, I feel like a lot of people don't know about this stuff. I didn't even know about half this stuff until I started looking into it. But I think that while this video serves that purpose, the sort of underlying theme I really saw here was just these shocking parallels between Lime Crime and a lot of these other more popular brands that are really focused and based around an individual. Lime Crime, really perfect examples of how you can't really put your entire brand and your entire brand identity into a person. Especially a person as problematic as those people. Because when those people fail, or those people go through something, or those people are in a scandal, the brand itself is also going to take a hit because they are so closely associated. I think a lot of beauty YouTubers and celebrities have almost this like obsession with making their brands so integral in their own identity. And while I think that's a smart thing to do in the sense that they're using their built-in audience as a springboard into success, I also think that it's a dangerous thing to do. If Doe Deer hadn't have stepped back in 2016 when she did, I don't think this brand would still be around. Or even if they were, I think they would be really struggling. There are so many makeup brands out there now and so many companies that you can actively support that don't have terrible people running them. And I think that's why in the year of 2022 especially, people aren't going to be as quick to give their money to brands that have people at the head of them that actively suck. I also think another saving grace for this brand is simply the fact that a lot of these scandals and controversies happened when they were still a smaller brand. They weren't in as many brick and mortar stores like Ulta. They weren't as well known in the sort of beauty YouTube space. They were definitely still considered a smaller indie brand. I think had a lot of these scandals happened after the corporation had bought them out, I think that would have been a very different story for them. But because it all happened while they were still relatively small, a lot of this just sort of flew under the radar. I want to end this by saying this video is not to be like, oh, go boycott Lime Crime. It seems like, honestly, they're doing the best that they can. Doe Deer is no longer involved. It seems like they're trying really hard to put out good products and trying really hard to gain back the trust of the consumer. And it seems like the people running the company now are actually professionals who take feedback from customers and consumers very seriously. So if anything, I think that this is a good example of a brand that did it right. Like, they turned it around right. They made all the wrong decisions, but they also made all the right decisions at the right time in order to sort of steer the ship in the right direction. Like, the Lime Crime brand was heading towards a sinkhole in the middle of the ocean. Think like Pirates of the Caribbean. They were heading towards a sinkhole in the middle of the ocean, and they were able to steer away and sail into the sunset. And honestly, I think that's admirable and well-deserved. Would I buy anything from Doe Deer? Absolutely not. No, I wouldn't recommend it. But would I buy things from Lime Crime now? Yeah, if something interested me, I absolutely would. It seems like they've really done the work in trying to become a better, more well-rounded company. And despite all of these scandals and controversies, they've come out on the other end as a better company because of it, with people in charge who haven't dressed up like Hitler. And yeah, anyway, that is sort of the evolution and scandals of Lime Crime Cosmetics. Hope you guys found this video as interesting as I did. I thought it was so interesting to look into everything and just like find all of this stuff out. A lot of it, like the China doll stuff, I had literally never heard about before. It's nutty. But anyway, I love you guys so much. Let me know, did you know about this stuff? Were you aware of a lot of the Lime Crime stuff? Do you have any thoughts and opinions on everything? Let me know down below. I love you guys so much. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please like and subscribe, or just like, or just subscribe, or do neither. Honestly, just so happy you're watching me. Thank you so much for being here. My merch, my social media, and my vlog and podcast channel will be linked down below, along with my social justice spotlight. You can go check that out. And yeah, I love you guys so much, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!